The tide was low, but the dead were rising in his memory. Beneath the cracked wood of the dock, something scraped. Not claws, not chains, teeth. Francois Delacour hadn't worn his uniform in years, yet the ghost of it clung to him like wet linen. Rain slid down his temples, mixing with sweat with guilt. Saint-Domingue reeked of mold and rum, but all he could smell was the Loire, the river where he'd lost her. He thought exile would bury the past, but that was before he walked in. Blackbeard. No name was spoken, no greeting exchanged, just a look, a silence thick as cannon smoke. And in that silence, Delacour knew the sea hadn't forgiven him, and neither had she. This isn't just a pirate story. This is the confession of a man chased by a secret so heavy, even the oceans spat him out. Gold, betrayal, and something far older than guilt, something that still waits beneath the waves. The gold was cursed, yes, but it was my name, they screamed in the dark. What did Blackbeard want? In that night? And what did Delacour see in his eyes? Mercy or the same storm that took his daughter? Legends aren't just told. They're passed from sailor to sailor. If you crave the untold tales of the sea, loyalty, loss, and vengeance, subscribe to the channel and claim your place in our crew. The candlelight flickered as Blackbeard's hand pressed the letter down onto the soak table. Wind howled through the cracks in the tavern walls, carrying with it the scent of salt, sweat, and old rum. Thunder rolled somewhere far off, as if the sea itself was listening. Delacour's fingers froze just inches from the paper. His hand trembled, not from cold, but from something far older, buried deep in the marrow of his bones. "Your name is on that letter," Blackbeard said, his voice low and heavy like the anchor of a doomed ship. "And hers too." The room fell silent. Delacour's breath caught in his throat. He didn't need to read it. He knew what it was. A message from Admiral Hornsby. The ghost he'd been running from since the war. A British traitor hiding among the reefs of Nueva Granada, now crawling back into the light with a secret that could turn the Caribbean into ash. But it wasn't the map that shook him. It was the name, her name. The little girl he'd left behind on the banks of the Loire years ago, when peace had a price and he had no courage left to say no. She was never meant to be part of the pact, but she was. And Blackbeard knew. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He only looked at Delacour with eyes that had seen too many men break, too many oaths shattered, too many daughters buried for gold that cursed the hands that touched it. "You signed the devil's parchment once, Frenchman, and now the devil wants more." Delacour sat back, the air thick in his lungs. His chest ached, not from age, but from the weight of memory. The tavern around them seemed to fade into shadow, leaving only the candle, the letter, and the man across from him who knew far too much. "I give you a ship," Blackbeard continued, his tone like the sea before a storm. "A crew, and a chance, not to make it right, but to end it." He leaned in. "Sink the past, or let it drown you." Delacour looked down. The wax seal on the letter had already been broken. The paper smelled of damp and decay. And yet, as he touched it, he felt the heat of the flames from years ago. The screams, the burning fields, the face of his daughter staring through the smoke, waiting for him to come back. He never did, and now the sea had dragged it all back to the surface. Outside, a gull cried. The sound pierced through the storm like a blade through cloth. Somewhere beyond the harbor, the silhouette of a ship swayed gently, Blackbeard's gift or curse. Delacour closed his eyes. "I buried her beside the treaty I signed, not to honor her, but so the ocean would remember what I did." He stood. His boots were heavy. Every step toward the door felt like sinking deeper into the ocean. As he opened it, the night poured in, rain, fog, and something colder, a memory that refused to die. "Where's the map?" he asked without turning. Blackbeard's reply came after a long pause. Closer than you think, but it's not the map you fear. It's the truth it leads to. Delacour walked into the storm. Behind him, the tavern door creaked shut, and with it, the last warmth of any life he might have claimed as peace. There was no turning back now. He had taken the offer, not to find redemption, but because some wounds don't close, they only wait for salt, and the Caribbean was full of it. Blackbeard remained in the shadows, staring at the candle as it melted slowly into nothing. The sea doesn't forget, he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. It only waits. The Vendetta creaked under the weight of the dawn, its torn sails fluttering like the ragged wings of a dying bird. Mist curled over the restless sea, swallowing the hull piece by piece as the frigate slipped quietly from the harbor. The air was thick with salt and secrets, the kind that clung to skin and bone long after the sea breeze faded. On deck, a crew of shadows moved like ghosts, each bearing scars the ocean had carved deep into their flesh and souls. There was the surgeon, missing his left hand, who stitched wounds by memory and whispered prayers to the broken. A mute cabin boy who watched the world with wide eyes but spoke only in silence. And a woman, once stolen from the African coasts, who read the tides like sacred verses, her fingers tracing the water's rhythm as if summoning mercy from the sea itself. Delacour said nothing to them. His voice was a ghost, heard only in the hollow spaces between their tasks. No orders, no commands, only a promise, gold to fill their pockets, vengeance to burn their hearts, and silence to keep their sins buried beneath the waves. In the dim light of his cabin, a faded portrait stared back at him. The soft eyes of a child, the curve of a smile lost to time and blood. His daughter, the reason why this journey was no mere hunt for treasure. This was a voyage for redemption. The Vendetta was not just a ship, it was a coffin carved from broken hopes and whispered curses. Its timbers held stories of mutiny, men driven mad by betrayal, hands turned against brothers, trust shattered like splintered wood beneath their boots. As the frigate cut through the fog, Delacour's fingers brushed the frame of that portrait one last time. His heart hammered with the weight of every lost chance, every silent scream drowned by the ocean's endless roar. "Gold is nothing," he muttered, voice rough like gravel, "if the price is your soul." The crew did not hear, but the sea did. And Blackbeard, ever watching from the shadows, knew well the price of a curse born on a ship like this. Because in these waters, the Vendetta was more than a name. It was a promise, a dark promise whispered by the wind. Redemption is a storm that never ends. The second night at sea wrapped the Vendetta in darkness thick as velvet. The moon hid behind heavy clouds, and the waves whispered secrets only the wind could understand. Above, the lookout's voice broke the silence like a distant bell toll. A schooner, no crew, lanterns lit, flags black as death. Delacour's eyes narrowed, shadows deepening in the flicker of the lanterns swinging from the rigging. The sea held its breath. The ship drifted like a ghost, abandoned but alive, a vessel lost to time, carrying a silence heavier than any cannonball. They boarded her with wary steps, boots echoing on rotting wood. The deck creaked underfoot, the smell of brine and decay curling in the stale air. No voices, no footsteps. Only the soft slap of water against the hull and the faint swish of the lanterns swinging in the salty breeze. Below deck, they found a single box, battered, sealed tight with salt-crusted iron. Delacour's fingers trembled as he pried it open. Inside lay a child's blonde, wig soft and tangled as seaweed, a delicate dress faded and stained, and a letter, its seal unmistakable, Hornsby's mark pressed deep in crimson wax. Delacour's throat tightened. He unrolled the parchment with a reverence that spoke of dread and hope. intertwined. His voice barely a whisper, he read aloud the cruel truth. Your daughter did not die. She was taken. The words fell like thunder. A murmur swept the crew, eyes wide with disbelief, hearts pounding in chests like war drums. The night grew colder, the shadows stretching longer. No one dared sleep. The silence pressed against their skin like cold water. From the edge of the fog, a small skiff appeared, cutting through the mist like a shadow itself. No oars moved, no sail caught the wind, and in that tiny boat, Blackbeard sat, a phantom watching, his gaze like burning coal. Delacourt's breath hitched. Blackbeard did not speak. He only watched. The sea held its darkest secret that night, a song rising from the abyss, calling to lost souls and broken men. The ocean takes what it wants, Blackbeard finally said, his voice rough as the rocks beneath the waves. But sometimes it offers a price to get it back. Delacour looked into the blackness, the letter trembling in his hand. The curse of the vendetta was no longer just about gold or revenge. It was about a girl lost to the deep, and a father haunted by a choice that had shattered his world. The night swallowed them whole, and the abyss sang on. There would be no rest until the song was answered, because some debts run deeper than the ocean's floor, and some ghosts are bound to the tide forever. A heavy sky hung low over Santa Marta, thick with clouds that promised rain but never delivered. The wind tasted of salt and betrayal as the vendetta slipped into the harbor, its sails stained and tired like the men who bore them. The town lay silent, a ghost of its former self, its streets cracked and empty beneath the watchful eyes of a fortress. Abandoned by the crown, but claimed by shadows, inside those crumbling walls, Admiral Hornsby had built a fortress as unyielding as the lies he told. Stone cold and unforgiving, it rose like a spectre against the grey sky, a cage for secrets too dangerous to escape. Delacour stepped forward, his boots echoing on the cracked flagstones. The weight of his past pressed down on him like the sky itself. He held the map tight, the worn edges digging into his palm, the last thread of hope and madness tangled in its folds. "I offer a trade," he said, voice rough like the ocean's edge. "The map, for answers. Where is she? What did you do with my daughter?" Hornsby's laugh was bitter and sharp, cutting through the cold air like a whip. "Your daughter," he sneered, "was the price of your victory at Tolosa. A victory paid in blood and broken oaths. I merely collected what France surrendered." Delacour's heart cracked open like shattered glass. Rage exploded inside him, a storm he could no longer hold back. His fist slammed against Hornsby's cheek, the sound echoing like thunder inside the fortress. The map slipped from Delacour's grasp, tumbling to the floor with a hollow thud. They all stared as the paper unfolded, revealing lines that twisted and lied. The map was false, every step, every promise, every moment, a trap, a cruel game played by those who wield power like poison. The crew whispered in the shadows, fear and fury knotting in their throats. Delacour's world spun, on the edge of a blade. The cost of his obsession was more than he had bargained for. Beneath the clouds, the sea waited, endless, unforgiving. And so did Blackbeard. From the darkness beyond the fortress, his voice rose like a curse. "Trust no man who offers gold without a price, for the deepest wounds are hidden beneath the brightest treasures." Delacour bent down, trembling, and picked up the map, the lie that had led them here. The true hunt was just beginning. Night fell like a black shroud over the vendetta, swallowing the ship and its crew in cold silence. The only sounds were the whisper of the waves and the distant cry of seabirds settling for rest. But beneath that quiet, death was stalking them. Hornsby's betrayal was a blade twisting in the dark. He had sold their secret, the map, the daughter, everything, to ruthless English privateers lurking just beyond the jagged cliffs. As the first moonlight bled through the mist, their shadows emerged like ghosts hungry for blood. The attack was sudden, a fury of steel and gunfire that tore through the night. The Vendetta's deck became a battlefield soaked in sweat, salt, and the bitter taste of desperation. The mute cabin boy fought with silent fury, his small frame weaving between enemies, shielding the African woman who read the tides like a prayer. His sacrifice came swift and brutal, a blade through his chest, a breath lost forever to the sea. The surgeon, cursed with one eye, fought with the precision of a man haunted by ghosts. His hands, though broken, never faltered. A pistol cracked, blood dripped down his face from the wound where his other eye should have been. Still, he stayed alive, a miracle carved from pain. Delacour felt a sharp fire in his shoulder, a wound that burned deeper than flesh. His blood mingled with the salt air, the ache a reminder that no man escapes the sea unscarred. Through the smoke and chaos, Blackbeard appeared like a shadow risen from hell. Two sabers gripped, tight in his hands, his eyes cold and unreadable. He did not fight, he did not help, he only watched. The privateers faltered, their numbers broken, their will shattered by the stubborn fight of the cursed crew. As dawn bled pink over the horizon, the English retreated, leaving silence thick and heavy in their wake. Blackbeard stepped close to Delacour, the weight of his gaze heavier than the wound in his shoulder. "You still do not understand why you are here," he whispered, voice rough like the grinding of chains. Delacour's breath caught. Pain and doubt tangled in his chest. The battle was over, but the war within was far from won. Some wounds bleed longer in the dark, and some truths are as sharp as the blades Blackbeard carried, waiting to be grasped. Delacour tied Hornsby to a fallen mast, the rough wood biting into the traitor's wrists like the sea's own chains. Around them, the crew gathered, eyes burning with anger, voices low and hungry for justice. The night was cold, the cliff's edge looming like the mouth of the abyss, just steps away. Hornsby met their gazes with a twisted smile, dragging the last shreds of his pride from the depths of betrayal. He pulled a sword from his belt and one by one offered it to the men. "You decide," he said, voice smooth but heavy with poison. "Justice or vengeance?" The men hesitated, hands twitching toward the blades that promised release or ruin. The air crackled with tension, a storm ready to break. But it was not the surgeon, nor the cabin boy's ghost, nor even Delacour who stepped forward. It was the African woman, her eyes steady and fierce as the tides she had long read. "He sold children in Sierra Leone," she said, voice cutting through the silence like a whip. "He doesn't deserve the sea. Bury him beneath it, beneath the earth." Delacour's jaw tightened. The wound in his shoulder throbbed, but his heart grew colder. He nodded. No more words. Hornsby was dragged down to the cliff's base, the earth, turned over like a dark promise. The dirt swallowed him slowly, alive and forgotten, beneath the crashing waves and cold wind. As the last handful of soil fell, a faint sound stirred, a girl's voice, soft as a lullaby carried on the breeze. Or perhaps it was only the echo of the past, calling from the depths where no light reached. The crew stood silent, the weight of their judgment settling like a shroud. Blackbeard watched from the shadows, a ghost himself, his eyes reflecting the flicker of distant lightning. "The sea claims what men cannot," he murmured, voice low and distant, "and sometimes it sings for those who never return." Delacour stared out over the cliffs, the wind tearing at his coat, and knew this was no end. It was only another beginning. The Vendetta groaned under the weight of the storm, its battered sails torn like ragged wings fighting against a sky swollen with fury. Waves rose like mountains, smashing down with the wrath of 1,000 ghosts. Lightning cracked, splitting the night into shards of blinding white, and thunder roared like the roar of lost souls condemned to wander the deep. Delacour stood at the helm, hands gripping the wheel until his knuckles bled, his breath ragged and salt-choked. Around him, the crew fought desperately to hold the shattered ship together, but the sea was a cruel master, and it had already decided their fate. The Vendetta broke in two, a wounded beast torn apart by the storm's teeth. Screams mixed with the howl of the wind, men lost beneath the waves, swallowed by the dark arms of the abyss. When the morning came, it brought silence. Delacour awoke on the shore of a nameless island, his body bruised and broken, fever burning in his veins like a living fire. The salt air was thick with decay and despair, the trees whispering secrets in tongues only the cursed could understand. His mind drifted in and out of fevered dreams, the voice of his daughter calling to him, soft and distant, weaving through the night like a fragile thread of hope. He saw her face in the flicker of the campfire, heard her laughter carried on the waves, felt her warmth like a ghost's touch. But she was gone, and so was the Vendetta. Days blurred into nights, and nights into endless echoes of regret. Hunger gnawed at his belly, thirst burned his lips, and madness crept closer with every heartbeat. Then, one night, as the wind moaned through the dark caves where he sought refuge, a shadow appeared. Blackbeard. Not as a savior, not as an enemy, but as a judge. He stepped from the mist, eyes like burning coals piercing the dark. Delacour's heart thundered in his chest, weak and trembling. Blackbeard's voice was a cold blade slicing through the fever. "You thought you came for vengeance," he said, stepping closer, the scent of smoke and salt heavy around him. "But you were always the executioner." The words hung in the air, heavier than the storm that had cast them here. Delacour wanted to deny it, to fight back. But the truth settled like a stone in his gut, a weight too heavy to carry, yet too sharp to forget. The sea had not spared him, nor had his own hands. Blackbeard turned, fading into the fog as silently as he came, leaving Delacour alone with the crashing waves and the ghosts of what could never be undone. On that forsaken island, the general faced his final trial. Not from the enemy's blade, but from the soul he had shattered long ago. Because some shipwrecks are not of wood and sail, they are of the heart. And some storms rage forever within. Delacour's body was weak, bones aching from salt and storm, but his spirit clung stubbornly to life. When the French brigantine found him, a broken man washed ashore like flotsam, it was not mercy that brought him back to civilization, but necessity. The sea had spat him out, but the world still demanded his reckoning. In his worn hands he carried a single thing, a letter, soaked with the ink of confession and the blood of guilt. Every line carved into the parchment was a testament, a full admission of his crime, addressed to the government of France. The cost was clear. His name would be stained forever. Yet in this sacrifice lay a sliver of hope, a chance to save others, children like his lost daughter, swallowed by dark deals and broken promises. He signed with blood, the sting burning like a curse, sealing his fate. Now he waited in a dim tavern, the air thick with smoke and whispered secrets. Outside, the sea sang its endless song, a reminder that nothing stays hidden for long. And then, from the shadowed corner, Blackbeard appeared. Not with swords drawn, but with a look sharp enough to cut deeper than any blade. "If you send that letter," Blackbeard said, voice low and grave, "you will be forgotten, a name lost to the tides of time." He paused, the flicker of the hearth casting long shadows across his face. "But if you burn it, you will live as a hero." Delacour's eyes fixed on the fire. The flames danced, hungry and wild, like the choices clawing at his soul. His hands trembled, the weight of everything pressed down, the storms, the betrayals, the blood spilled, and the silence that followed. In that moment, the line between redemption and legend blurred, to be forgotten or to burn forever. The crackle of the fire was the only answer. Delacour reached out, and the future waited, poised on the edge of flame. Because some decisions are not about saving yourself, they are about what you leave behind in the dark, and some fires never die. On the horizon, a lone ship burned, its flames licking the night sky like angry spirits refusing to rest. The black smoke twisted into the clouds, a silent scream against the endless dark. Far below, on a quiet beach, a single grave marked only by a weathered compass stood guard against the tides, its owner lost to the sea's unforgiving embrace. François Delacour was gone, not just in body, but in soul. The man who once bore the weight of guilt like an anchor now vanished, swallowed by the ocean's endless secrets. His name was a whisper among sailors, spoken only when the wind was right and the waves held their breath. The confession he carried, the letter never sent, lay buried beneath sand and salt, sealed in a bottle worn by time and regret. A fisherman found it, but could not read the words. He only knew the seal, the mark of a man haunted by loss. So he buried it once more, beneath the shifting dunes, as if trying to bury the past itself. The sea does not forgive, it only remembers. And so does Blackbeard. Watching from the cliffs, a shadow blending with the mist, he whispered to the wind, "Some say I seek gold, but I chase what I could never save." His figure faded, swallowed by the fog, leaving only the echo of a name that no one dared to speak aloud. Delacour's legacy was not the gold, nor the map, nor the vengeance. It was the silence between the waves, the storm inside a man's heart that never calms, the betrayal buried deeper than any treasure, the daughter lost to promises made in shadows. He said the sea forgets. The old pirate's voice lingered like a curse, but he was wrong. It remembers who we were and what we did. The vendetta was broken. So were the men who sailed her, and the tale was never truly over, because some wounds are carved into the bones, and some stories drown, only to surface again when the tide is right. Did you already know this forgotten part of the story? And if you had been on that ship watching the flames swallow your past, what would you have done? What other sea stories deserve to be told here, the ones lost beneath salt and silence? If this story touched you in any way, don't let it vanish like so many other names the sea has taken. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep hearing what was never meant to be forgotten. The sea has many secrets, but only the brave remember to listen. The diary closes now, its pages heavy with salt and sorrow, but the ocean's song is never done.